Homage to the Buddha, the blessed, noble, and fully self-awakened one. So this evening, I want to go through the principles of meditation, mainly for the benefit of those who are new to the practice, and then to talk a little about this technique and why we use it. So the first things we need to know is, what does the Buddha mean by right awareness? And then we need to know how to deal with what takes us away from right awareness. And then, of course, we need to know what it is we're supposed to be investigating. So the first one, I like to just recall the actual biography of the Buddha, how he came to be fully liberated. He left home, seemingly, at the age of 29. I think he must have discussed this with his family and his wife, because they, although they must have been upset, I'm sure he said, "I'll be back in a couple of months or so." So he left with what we would call an existential crisis. In the mythology, this is expressed as one day coming across a very old person, a very sick person, as a corpse, and then an ascetic sitting under a tree. So he began to realize that just as sickness approaches other people, he himself would get sick, and he himself would get old, and he himself would die. And I think this happens to all of us, shall we say, towards the end of youth, somewhere between 25 and 30. Suddenly life is not endless. And if you haven't understood that then, it probably hits you in middle age. And if you miss that point, it's probably when you're dying. So he left with this idea, seeing the ascetic under the tree was some feeling in him that there must be an escape. In those days, the obsession was constant reincarnation. How did you get out of the loop? So there were many ascetics already when he began. These were the samanas who had come out of the Brahminical religion. They were trying to search a different way, like the hippies in the 70s. And there were very famous teachers at the time. So he went to two of them, and they taught him how to develop what we call the absorptions. Jhana. Mm-hmm. And in both cases, they invited him to become a teacher. So we can see that very quickly he became an adept at that sort of meditation. But what he found was that when he came out of this beautiful mental state, he was anxious and depressed. Once a person becomes an adept at developing these inner states of ecstasy, and you find this in all religions, through repetitive prayer, through mantra, visualizations. All you need in the tropics is a loincloth and a little bowl to get food and a tree to sit under. And you can be blissed out all day. So obviously this didn't particularly work for him. So he tried a different method, which was the great teacher of that was the founder of the Jain religion, the Jainista. The Jain leader, the Nigantha, was an elder contemporary. The understanding there was that the body itself was the product of your karma, of your past moral action. And the idea was to let go of the body so the soul would rise naturally into heaven. And even today you will find, especially elderly Jain people, towards the end of their lives, just stop eating. So the Buddha, the Bodhisattva at that time tried this seemingly for about 4 years. And he got very thin. He said he could hold his spine through his stomach. So if you try that now, you'll see how thin he was. And unfortunately, he found it was just more suffering. So he leaves his 5 companions who are disgusted with him because they thought he'd gone soft. So now we have to picture him on the roadside, probably feeling a little despairing. He's tried everything and he doesn't see an answer. And so he must be in a state of even deeper depression. And at that time, it would seem a woman passes by with some sweetmeats for the local shrine. But seeing this poor man, she offered him some. In the scriptures, it says that he shone like a god. That's up to you whether you believe. But the thing was that it revived him. And about this time, he remembers this memory of watching his father as a little boy. His father was doing the opening ploughing ceremony for the ploughing season. So we can imagine this 4, 5, 6-year-old watching his father, wondering, what he's doing. And what he remembers is that he was in the same level of concentration as these concentration exercises, but with this added quality of curiosity. Now, although he'd already had insights into the cause of suffering, for instance, he realized that when he had unwholesome thoughts, it produced more unwholesomeness in him. And when he had good thoughts, of course, he felt better for it. But here it seems that his practice turned around upon itself. Instead of trying to be happy, to try to seek the escape from suffering in happiness, he turns inward to try to discover how he creates suffering in the first place. And so he finds a nice tree by the bank of a river, and he makes the determination to crack this problem. But a great doubt arises in him. And this again is put mythologically as Mara, the evil one, attacking him. And the question is, who are you to try to find the end of suffering? And at that time, the earth goddess rises to defend him. And she says, he has every right to seek the end of suffering because he has perfected the virtue of generosity. In other words, he wasn't just doing this for himself. He was doing it for his loved ones and for humanity. And that's what gave him the strength to make this determination. He said he would sit there and crack the problem or die. So I always say, very lucky for him, lucky for us, 6 hours, and he made it. So the point of this introduction was to bring about this insight he had about being a child. So what is it about the way the child looks at the world which we have lost? So if you remember how a child looks when it first sees something for the first time. So the first time, for instance, it sees a spider. You can see that the eyes lock onto the object. The world disappears. They are completely absorbed. And the important thing is the jaw drops. So from our point of view, they're just wasting time. They're gormless. Left on the back of the head. And in that moment, destroying any ability to become fully liberated. So now, when the child has had time to absorb the information, the child always turns round and asks, what is it, mummy, daddy, what is it? And the answer is, that's a spider. So now the child has a photocopy in the mind of a spider and a label. And so the next time it sees a spider, this photocopy connects with the spider. And the child rejoices and turns to the mother and says, spider, spider. And mummy says, very good. But that child did not see that spider. What he saw was his photocopy placed on that spider. He'd already lost the ability to gaze without words, without photocopy, to see that individual spider. We are doing that all the time. The whole of our lives is trying to fit the world into our concept of the way it should be. So that is why all these Vipassana, Dzogchen, Zazen, whatever insight meditation you get in Buddhism, always draw you back down to the body, to feeling, to sensation, to the actual scent, the smell of something in your nose, the texture of what is in your mouth. And with an emotion, it's feel the sensations in the body. So we'll come to that a little bit more at the end. But keep in mind, if you ask yourself, how am I supposed to be investigating? Just bring to mind the look of that child's face, and to develop that quality of gazing. For instance, when you walk around, say the countryside here. Well, more if you stand here at the top, at the wall, and just pan the countryside like a camera. Don't look for anything. Just watch how the eye gives you information as you move. So you don't have to look for anything. The eye itself sees. It doesn't need you. So it's the same with this intuitive awareness. It just needs to look, to gaze, to feel, to experience. It doesn't need you. This intuitive intelligence is screaming, get that meditator out of the way. So have the picture of the child's mind when you ask yourself, how should I be looking? Now, the things that take us away are called hindrances. And tomorrow Gautam will give a more detailed understanding of it in a brilliant way. So I will just give just a general direction. There's only two types. There's the type that's like a whirlwind. It just flings you away. And there's the other type, which is like a whirlpool dragging you down. So the first type is anything which excites your mind. So desires, your aversions, your guilts, your shame, all your planning, romance, all these take you away into a dream world. So it's always the same technique. As soon as you wake up, you have to recognize and acknowledge what it is that's driving you away. And then you just come back into the body. If you can feel the anxiety, the excitement here in the body, you stay with it and wait for it to dissipate. And see if you can wait to the very end. Usually as it becomes lighter and lighter, the mind does something else. So see if you can see it right to the end. And at that point, you'll experience that liberation from desire. And a little joy arises. So this is a taste of Nibbana. A heart which does not have these obsessive desires. If you don't feel anything, you just go back to the breath. The other side is the dullness and the lethargy that make you fall into sleep. So although it's difficult the first 2 or 3 days, afterwards, whenever that comes to you, you have to make a determination not to be annihilated. And you make every effort to stay awake. And you make those sensations your objects to feel, to observe. And if you keep moving your attention inside your head, down the body, that keeps you awake. And sometimes, if it gets too heavy, stand up in the meditation. And if even then you can feel it's so heavy, just leave quietly and go for a walk. You have to take the big fat dog for a walk. Up and down. Up and down. Up and down. And you have to wait for that energy to exhaust itself. In all these cases, the unwholesome energies always are moving towards their opposites.
In all these cases,
Both the exciting ones and the dullness. The energy is moving towards. So what was, shall we say, cruelty or a lack of love will always move towards love and compassion. And the dullness and lethargy will always move towards pure energy. So those are just general directions on how to deal with dullness and with the. And in fact, if we work with them properly, they are actually our teachers. So finally, we have to be clear about what it is we are investigating. So the first one is this process of desire. And whenever you come off a dream, you always come back to your body and just see, for instance, if you're anxious or if you're planning a holiday, see, when you come back. So you might feel the sensations, the feelings, and see if you can also be aware of this energy that wants to escape back into the dream world. So you have two objects in your mind, both the physical mental state and that desire. You can feel it. So there, just stay there until that desire completely fades away and the mind stops. So it's really recognizing the process of desiring. The second one is impermanence. So once the desire is gone and you're just left with feeling in the body, look at it more closely to see whether it's actually in a process of changing. And when that becomes clear to you, you can sometimes, as it were, push it away far enough for you to see that it's an object of your awareness. And because you're the awareness not doing anything, you begin to realize that this is happening of its own accord. So this is the direct teaching that of not me, not mine, not self. Every time you're aware of something, you can't be it. When we were babies, seemingly for the first 4 months, there was just information coming at us from all over the place. We couldn't make sense of it. And then after 4 months, it seems, the first object appears in all that information. And it's your carer. It seems it takes 3 years for that child to separate itself from the world around by the process of pushing away, really looking at it as an object. We're using the same technique to push away everything that we think we are inside us, to see it's not me, not mine. So those are those 3 things that you're investigating. The process of desire, so that's your first port of call, that's your first thing. And then how things are constantly changing. So as soon as you identify with something, it's disappeared. And that everything is an object, just having its own energy, not me, not mine. It's very important that you go through that process with desire and wait for the heart to purify itself. If you go straight for the impermanence and the not self, there's a danger that you're not allowing the heart to exhaust its feelings. You're suppressing it. It's called emotional bypassing. So you see, what is happening when you are meditating in Vipassana is the heart is actually purifying. So there's a therapy going on, you see. Don't do it for the therapy, because then you miss out on the spiritual insight. But if you do it for the spiritual reason, the heart heals itself, and it's very cheap. Which doesn't mean to say that sometimes you do need a therapist, especially with relationships. So so we've talked about right awareness and the baby's face. We've talked about how to deal with what takes us away, all those things that create dreams and the mental states that take us into oblivion. And then finally, what it is we're investigating. The process of desire, impermanence, not so. So the Mahasi was a teacher who was well known in the middle of Burma, during the Second World War. And when Burma was liberated from British rule, the first government, the Prime Minister with some rich supporters, decided to start a meditation center and invited the Mahasi Sayadaw to come and teach. Such was the success of this methodology that even by the middle 50s he was traveling to Sri Lanka and other places. And you'll find most teachers use one or two of these methods. I myself try to remain as close to the way my teacher taught me as I can. So the two techniques were to note and to go slow. So if we remember that whenever we're looking at something, there's always a concept, there's always a word. So when you're experiencing something within yourself, a word should come to mind. If it doesn't come, don't be concerned about that. Just use a general word, feeling, thinking.
Pensiero.
And the idea is that the noting word is pushing you to look more closely. It's as though you were looking at somebody coming through a mist.
Yeah.
And as they come closer, you can see who they are until they come right out of the mist, and then you know who they are. So you have to keep looking at sensations and feelings until they become very clear. His image was throwing a stone at a wall or a tin on top of a wall. So you're aiming your attention towards the object. At first it seems a little bit forced. But because every day is virtually the same, you rarely have to find a new word after 2 or 3 days. And of course that's the purpose of repetition. And then of course you can become a little lazy. When you come off a dream, you can hear yourself saying, rising, falling, rising, falling. The habit is there, and you've got the habit going, so now you can have a dream.
Sognare.
So this is a waste of time.
Di tempo.
So it has to be deliberate. Now some people may find that they're aware of the word more than they are of the feeling. This means that this intuitive awareness is completely identified with the intellect. And those people usually say, noting is a waste of time, I'm not going to do it. Because it's obstructing me, you know. But actually they're the ones who really have to do it. They have to, as it were, keep looking through the word, around it, over it, whatever, but keep moving towards the feeling. And very slowly the word begins to recede backwards. And the feeling, sensations, they come much more obvious to the person. And what this is telling the meditator is that this intuitive awareness is finally releasing itself, escaping from intellectual prisons. So it's worth doing it. Going slow is very simple. When you slow the body down, the mind slows down. And if you want to, running through a forest is one thing, walking slowly through a forest, you see much more. So you'll see, the slower you go, the more you see. It's just simple. And finally, see if you can really note your intentions. Remember that in Buddhist psychology, so long as something is an intention, nothing has actually happened. As soon as you empower the intention and it becomes an action, a thought, a train of thoughts, a speech, something you say, an action of the body, you are reinforcing a habit, and there will be consequences. So make sure that when you empower an intention, it's always a good one. If it's not a good one, all you have to do is just stay still, feel the energy of the desire, wait for it to exhaust itself. So this brings us full circle. So just as a reminder, right awareness, the child's face. That hindrances become our teachers when we know how to deal with them. So anything that takes us away, we have to come back into the body to feel what's causing it. And if it's dullness and lethargy, we must refuse to be annihilated and feel it. And these three characteristics, desire, impermanence, not self. If you do it in that order, with everything that you're experiencing, I think you'll find it much easier to work with. See if you can keep up the noting so that it becomes a habit. Slow down and see if you can catch your intentions. Intending to open a door. Just one moment of stillness while you feel where you acknowledge the intention. So I can only hope my words have been of some assistance. That I have not caused even greater confusion. And that by your commitment to this particular form of practice, you will be liberated from all sufferings, sooner rather than later.